After the night at the bar brings love and revelations. Chapter 1. The Night at the Bar. The city lights blurred into a golden haze outside the rain-streaked window of Blue Lantern Bar, one of the few places in Midtown where a woman could lose herself in a crowd without feeling lost. Mary sat at the far end of the polished mahogany counter, swirling the last amber sip of her third bourbon. Her blazer hung over the stool beside her, wrinkled and forgotten, and her sleek ponytail had loosened into soft waves that framed her pale face. It had been a week from hell. A client accused of fraud had exploded in the courtroom, and her boss hinted that she was too distracted. She hated when people whispered about her like she was fragile. No one knew how much strength it took to be her. Mary rarely drank more than a glass, but tonight, her loneliness had carved a hole so deep she couldn't bear the silence. She wasn't looking for trouble, just escape. "Rough day?" a voice asked, smooth like aged whiskey. Mary turned and blinked. The man who'd slipped onto the stool beside her was tall, dark-haired, with a shadowed jaw and stormy blue eyes that looked too serious for a bar scene. His tailored black coat had raindrops clinging to the collar, and something about him, the stillness, the posture, suggested wealth, maybe power. She gave a half-laugh. "You have no idea." He didn't press, just nodded at the bartender. "Scotch, neat. And another for the lady." Mary hesitated, then nodded. Why not? They talked about nothing and everything. He didn't give his name, and she didn't ask. She told him she was a lawyer. He mentioned business travel. But the conversation felt easy, warm. She laughed more in an hour with him than she had in weeks. The drinks blurred into a buzz, and her laughter turned to whispers, then a kiss outside in the rain. She remembered his hands in her hair, his voice at her ear. Then, darkness. Mary woke the next morning with a start. Her head throbbed, and sunlight stabbed through thin hotel curtains. She sat up too fast, the sheets slipping from her bare shoulders. This wasn't her room. Her heels were scattered on the floor. Her blazer was draped over a chair. But the room was sterile, unfamiliar, cold. And she was alone. A folded white hotel robe sat on the armchair, along with her phone and clutch. No note, no message, not even a name. Her stomach twisted. What had she done? The night blurred at the edges, but she remembered enough to feel sick. She dressed quickly, her cheeks flushed with shame. As she stepped into the hallway, it struck her. This wasn't even the hotel she'd checked into earlier that evening. Somehow, in her drunken haze, she'd followed a stranger to a place she didn't belong. She didn't even know his name. Chapter 2. The morning after. Mary pressed the elevator button with a trembling finger, her reflection in the brushed metal doors barely recognizable. The elevator chimed softly, and she stepped inside, gripping her purse like a lifeline. Her stomach churned, not just from the hangover, but from the weight of something far worse. Regret. The streets outside were still wet with last night's rain. Mary wrapped her blazer around her, hailing a cab with one raised hand. The driver glanced at her disheveled appearance, but said nothing as she mumbled her address. As the city blurred past the window, she replayed the night in fragments, his eyes, his hands, the way he said something that made her laugh. But the rest, it was a fog. She couldn't even picture the hotel sign, the room number, or what they'd done after they kissed. The intimacy of it was there in the ache between her legs, in the scent of his cologne still clinging faintly to her skin. And she hated herself for not remembering. When the cab pulled up to her apartment, she paid the fare, her hands shaking. Her neighbor, Mrs. Bell, was just stepping out with her terrier and gave her a knowing look. Mary ignored it, eyes on the floor as she hurried inside. Mary sighed, brushing her fingers through her messy hair as she crept into the bathroom. She stood beneath the shower head for a long time, letting the water wash away the remnants of the night, the lipstick, the perfume, the guilt. She told herself it was just one night, one mistake. It wouldn't happen again. Weeks passed. Mary buried herself in work, in motherhood, in the routines that kept her sane. The memory of that night faded into a locked drawer in her mind. She never told anyone, not even her best friend. And then the nausea started. She chalked it up to stress. Skipped meals. Too much coffee. But when her period didn't come the next month, or the one after that, she bought a test. 2 pink lines. She took 3 more. By the 4th test, she was sitting on the bathroom floor, knees drawn to her chest, hands trembling as she stared at the results. Pregnant. And she had no idea who the father was, only a first name, maybe, if that. No contact, no closure, no way to explain it to her future child. But there was one thing she knew for certain. She would love that baby, fiercely, unconditionally. She would raise them, protect them, fight for them, just as she had always fought for herself. Even if she had to do it alone. Chapter 3. Raising the Twins. 7 years later. Mary walked briskly down the marble-floored corridor of the Franklin and Rhodes law firm, files clutched tightly to her chest, her heels clicking with practiced precision. Her hair was pinned neatly, her suit impeccably tailored. No one who passed her would guess that she had been up since 5 a.m. packing school lunches, checking homework, and mending a rip in her son's favorite hoodie. She had become a master of balance, lawyer by day, mom by always. Mary called a junior associate as she passed the break room. Congrats on the Jefferson case. She offered a polite smile, nodding. Thanks. But her mind wasn't on the case. It was on the 2 grinning faces she had dropped off at school that morning. Adrian and Lily. Her miracle twins. They were her everything. Born 4 weeks premature but fierce from the start. Lily, with her wild curls and fearless spirit, and Adrian, the quieter twin with an old soul and eyes that always seemed to study the world a little deeper. They were identical in one specific way. Each had a small, moon-shaped birthmark behind their right knee. And both were allergic to strawberries. Severely allergic. Just the scent could cause a reaction. Mary had learned that the hard way during their first birthday party when a neighbor's toddler brought a strawberry cupcake. Adrian had broken out in hives before even tasting it. The emergency room visit had been terrifying. Pediatricians called the allergy genetic and rare. Mary had no history of it in her family. The first few years, she brushed it off as a fluke. But when Lily had the same reaction a year later, and a new pediatric specialist noted that kind of allergy tends to run through the paternal line, Mary's heart had clenched. She had no name to give them, no medical history, no contact. Just a face she could barely remember and a night she couldn't forget. Later that evening, Mary sat at the kitchen table, watching Adrian scribble math equations while Lily argued with her tablet over a reading app. Mom, Adrian asked, pushing up his glasses, why can't I eat strawberries like Jason? Mary smiled softly. Because you're special, baby. You and your sister both. Your bodies just don't like strawberries. But why? She hesitated. Some things are just part of who we are. Like how you both have curly hair. Or those little birthmarks behind your knees. Adrian nodded, satisfied for now. Mary turned her gaze to the window, her smile fading. The birthmarks. The allergies. Pieces of a man she never truly knew, living inside the children she loved more than life. Some nights, she wondered what he would think if he knew. Other nights, she wondered if he even remembered her at all. I would like to take a moment away from the story. If you like my short stories, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you have any ideas for my next storyline, please be sure to share it in the comments. Now back to the story. Chapter 4. The Davidson Revelation. The courthouse bustled with its usual chaos, attorneys in sharp suits, clients pacing nervously, clerks carrying stacks of paper like offerings to gods of bureaucracy. Mary sat at the plaintiff's table in courtroom 3C, focused on her notes, tuning out the hum of the courtroom as the judge finished a side discussion. Across the room sat Mr. Bernard Davidson, founder and CEO of Davidson Global Holdings, a man whose presence turned heads wherever he went. Silver hair, piercing gaze, crisp suit worth more than Mary's monthly salary. He exuded power, and, for some reason, he couldn't stop staring at her. She noticed it midway through her argument, when she stood to make a point and felt the weight of his eyes. After the hearing, while she was collecting her documents, he approached. "Miss Thomas," he said, his voice deep and composed. "A moment." She looked up, wary. "Yes." "I apologize for the interruption. I was observing the proceedings. My interest is more personal than legal." He paused, his expression unreadable. "Do your children attend Horizon Elementary by chance?" Mary stiffened. "They do. I believe I may have seen them at the school's charity fair last week." His voice softened. "Adrian and Lily, correct?" Her heart stopped. "Yes," she said cautiously, trying to hide the panic swelling in her chest. He nodded. "They have distinctive traits. A very rare birthmark. And an allergy to strawberries." The world tilted. "I beg your pardon?" Mr. Davidson took a breath. "Forgive me. I know this is an unusual approach, but I've seen those traits before. In my family. In my son, Luke Davidson." Mary's fingers tightened around her case file. "I don't understand what you're implying." "I believe, no, I'm certain, your children are my grandchildren." The words landed like a bomb. Mary's throat went dry. She opened her mouth to deny it, to protest, but her mind flashed to that night. To the man's face. To the eyes that matched Adrian's. The quiet intensity that reminded her of Lily when she concentrated. Her worst fear and secret wish had just come to life. Mr. Davidson continued, carefully. "We can confirm it, of course. With your permission. A paternity test." Mary found her voice, though it came out hoarse. "Why now? Why, how?" "I saw them by chance. And when I asked around, someone mentioned your name. I had my suspicions, so I looked into you." He raised a brow. "You've done remarkably well for yourself, Miss Thomas. And for them." "They don't need anyone," she said, a trace of steel in her tone. "I've raised them on my own for 7 years." "I don't doubt that. But Luke deserves to know. And they deserve the truth." Mary stood frozen for a long moment, then finally whispered, "What if he doesn't want them? Then he will answer to me." Later that night, Mary stared at the test results that had arrived via private courier. Positive. Luke Davidson was the father of her twins. She folded the paper in trembling hands, tears stinging her eyes. It was real now, irrefutable. And everything was about to change. Chapter 5. Reunion. The private room in the upscale Midtown Cafe was quiet, save for the clink of a teaspoon against porcelain and the low hum of ambient jazz. Mary sat at the long table, her back straight, heart pounding. She'd worn a soft gray dress, elegant but modest, and had spent the morning trying to keep her hands from shaking. Across from her sat Mr. Davidson, calm as ever, sipping espresso. "He should be here any moment," he said gently. Mary nodded, her fingers clutched around her teacup. "And you're sure he doesn't remember me?" "I didn't show him your photo. Just told him there was something important he needed to hear." He agreed, reluctantly. Of course, she whispered. He probably thinks it's a business deal. The door opened. Mary's breath caught. Luke stepped into the room like a storm trailing a suit. He looked nearly the same, broad-shouldered, impeccably dressed, and slightly more weathered, like the years had carved deeper lines into his brow. His dark hair was shorter now, his jawline stronger. But those eyes, those piercing blue eyes, hadn't changed. He paused when he saw her. His brows furrowed. You. Mary stood, unsure what to say. Hello, Luke. He blinked, stunned. I remember you. That night, the bar. She nodded slowly. Yes. His eyes swept over her, and he swallowed hard. I didn't know how to find you. You were just gone the next morning. You left, she said, calmly. I woke up in the wrong room. I didn't even know your last name. Luke ran a hand through his hair. God. I didn't mean to leave like that. I thought maybe it was better that way. Just a one-night thing. Her voice was quiet. It wasn't just one night, Luke. He looked confused for a beat, until Mr. Davidson slid the envelope across the table. Luke opened it, scanned the document, and went still. His eyes snapped up to hers. You're saying I'm their father? Mary nodded once. He sat down heavily in the nearest chair, the color draining from his face. Twins? Yes. A boy and a girl. Adrian and Lily. I don't know what to say, he whispered. Say you want to meet them, Mr. Davidson said, voice firm. Luke looked at Mary. You raised them alone? I had no choice. I didn't even know your name. And when I realized I was pregnant, I was terrified. But they're the best thing that ever happened to me. He leaned forward, his voice breaking. Do they know about me? No. I never knew how to explain. He lowered his head into his hands, exhaling hard. This is a lot. I understand. I didn't come here to force anything, she said gently. But they deserve to know their father. Whether you want to be part of that, that's up to you. Luke was silent for a long time. Then he looked up, eyes glassy. I want to meet them. Chapter 6. Fatherhood Begins. The next weekend, the playground at Horizon Park buzzed with laughter and sunshine. Mary stood near the picnic tables, nerves bundled in her chest as she watched Adrian and Lily chase each other around the swings. Luke stood beside her, silent, his hands in the pockets of his leather jacket. He'd been unusually quiet on the drive over, and now, seeing them for the first time, his expression shifted between awe and disbelief. They're so alive, he said softly. They're kids, Mary said, smiling gently despite the tension. They're supposed to be. I mean, they look like me, Adrian especially. And Lily's got my mother's smile. Mary tilted her head. You remembered your mother's smile? Barely, he said. She died when I was 7. Mary glanced over. So you know what it's like, growing up without a parent. He looked at her, eyes intense. That's why I can't walk away now. She nodded. Good. Because they've lived their whole lives not knowing they were missing you. Before he could respond, Lily spotted them and shouted, Mommy, look. She ran over with Adrian close behind, both of them winded and giggling. Mary knelt. Hey, guys. Remember how I told you we were going to meet someone special today? They both nodded, wide-eyed. She turned. This is Luke. Luke crouched down slowly, level with them. Hi, Adrian. Hi, Lily. They stared for a moment. Lily cocked her head. Are you the one who sent us those books? Mary's breath caught. She had told them a friend sent the surprise box of illustrated science books last week after Luke asked to contribute something thoughtful. Luke smiled. I did. Do you like them? Adrian nodded. The one about stars is my favorite. I'm gonna be an astronaut. Lily giggled. He says that every week. Luke laughed softly. Astronaut's a good dream. I wanted to be one too when I was your age. The twins glanced at each other, then at Mary. She gave a small nod. Luke took a deep breath. There's something really important I want to tell you guys. The truth is, I'm your dad. They stared. Lily blinked. Like, a real dad? Yes, he said, voice trembling slightly. I didn't know about you for a long time, but I know now, and I want to be part of your lives if you'll let me. Adrian's face was unreadable, but Lily, bold as ever, stepped forward and said, Do you know how to make pancakes? Luke blinked. Yeah. She grinned. Then I guess you can stay. Mary laughed, tears threatening at the edges of her vision. Adrian looked up. Do you like building rockets? Luke's face lit up. Absolutely. Adrian gave a small, approving nod. Okay then. As the kids dragged him toward the monkey bars, Mary watched Luke with new eyes. He was clumsy, nervous, but trying. And when Adrian lost his grip and Luke caught him without hesitation, something in Mary's chest cracked open. Maybe this wasn't just a reunion. Maybe it was the start of something whole. Chapter 7. Regret and Redemption. It was nearly midnight when Luke stood outside Mary's apartment, nervously shifting on the stoop. He held a paper bag in one hand, a late-night peace offering of her favorite pastries from the 24-hour bakery near his condo. He'd called ahead to ask what she liked. Mary opened the door in pajama pants and an old law school sweatshirt. Her eyes were tired, but curious. Hey, he said quietly, lifting the bag. I come bearing bribes. She stepped aside with a smirk. I'll consider letting you in, depending on what kind of bribes. He handed her the bag. She peeked inside and raised an eyebrow. Cinnamon scones? You once told me, back at the bar, that they were the only dessert that ever made you cry. Mary blinked. You remember that? Luke's gaze softened. I remember more than I thought. She walked to the kitchen, placing the bag on the counter. So, what's this about? He leaned against the counter, suddenly solemn. I wanted to say I'm sorry. Mary's back stiffened. I was selfish that night, Luke continued. I wasn't in a place to open up to anyone. I was drinking too much, chasing distractions, just trying to forget how empty everything felt. I didn't exactly have clarity either, she replied. I was heartbroken and lost, and, yeah, I didn't expect anything lasting from that night. But you gave me something lasting, he said, voice thick. 2 incredible kids. And you raised them without me. I can't imagine how hard that was. It was hard, she said simply. But it was worth it. Luke nodded, then stepped closer. I want to be part of their lives. Not just for today or next week. For always. I want to take them to their first science fair. To teach Adrian how to ride a bike. To dance like an idiot with Lily at her school recital. Mary stared at him, unsure whether to trust the moment or her heart. I want to co-parent, Mary. I want to show up. And not just for them, he said, lowering his voice. But for you too. She felt her breath hitch. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, he added. But I'm here, if you'll let me stay. Mary looked at him for a long time, then reached into the bag and broke off a piece of scone. She took a bite. Then she smiled. You're lucky these still make me cry. Luke exhaled, a smile breaking through the tension. And in the quiet of her kitchen, the past started to loosen its grip. The walls around her heart, carefully built over years of survival, began to crack, just enough to let him in. Chapter 8. The Family Weekend. The Davidson country estate stretched across rolling hills just beyond the city limits. Mary had only seen places like it in magazines, stables, a private lake, a sprawling white house with stone terraces and balconies wrapped in ivy. "Are you sure this isn't a resort?" she whispered to Luke as they pulled up the winding driveway. He chuckled. "Nope. Just my childhood prison." She smirked, but her nerves fluttered. This was their first full weekend together as a family. Luke had invited Mary and the twins to spend time at the estate, partly to give the kids space to bond, and partly to prove to Mary he was serious. Adrian and Lily burst from the car, racing toward the front garden, shouting about the koi pond they spotted by the front steps. Mr. Davidson stood waiting by the door, wearing a casual blazer and a surprisingly warm expression. "Welcome," he said, clasping Mary's hand and then kneeling to greet the twins. "I hope you're ready for us morays, scavenger hunts, and way too many bedtime stories." Mary watched him with cautious admiration. Whatever her feelings about the powerful patriarch had been, he seemed to be doing everything he could to make her children feel welcome. Inside, the estate was elegant but surprisingly homey. Luke showed them to their rooms, gave the twins walkie-talkies, and announced there'd be a treasure map waiting in the garden by morning. As night fell, they sat around a fire pit near the lake. Adrian curled up against Luke, tired from a day of running through hedges and solving clues. Lily perched on Mary's lap, toasting marshmallows while Mr. Davidson read from a storybook in a surprisingly animated voice. Mary sipped wine from a crystal glass, watching her children giggle and Luke smile in a way she hadn't seen before, unguarded and warm. Later, when the twins were finally asleep in the guest wing, Luke and Mary stepped out onto the balcony. Stars hung overhead like scattered salt across black silk. "This feels surreal," Mary whispered. "Yeah, I keep thinking I'll wake up and it'll all be gone." She turned to him. "You're doing good, Luke." He looked at her, surprised. "I'm trying. I really want to get this right." "You are." She paused. "They adore you already." "And you?" he asked, voice low. "Is there any part of you that still sees us becoming something more?" Mary didn't answer right away. Instead, she reached for his hand. "I think we're already becoming it," she said softly. "One day at a time." Luke's eyes locked on hers. He leaned in slowly, and for the first time in 7 years, their lips met not as strangers, not as a mistake, but as two people beginning again. And under the stars, Mary finally allowed herself to believe in second chances. Chapter 9. Shadows of the Past. The following Monday, Mary returned to her office downtown, her heels clicking against polished floors, her sharp blazer tailored to perfection. But despite the mask of professionalism, her mind lingered on the weekend. Luke carrying Lily on his shoulders, Adrian falling asleep mid-sentence against Luke's chest, and the kiss that still buzzed on her lips like a secret. She should have felt triumphant. Instead, a small storm brewed inside her. Because part of her still didn't trust it. Later that evening, as she sifted through paperwork, her office door opened, and in walked her past. Jordan Wilder. The man she'd once nearly married. "Jordan," she said flatly, standing slowly. "To what do I owe the surprise?" Still sharp as ever, Mary. He smiled, that familiar politician's grin. "I heard you're back in the courtroom full-time. Figured I'd stop by. Congratulate you." "Uh-huh." Her arms crossed. "You don't drop by unless you want something." "I heard you're associating with the Davidsons," he said casually, stepping closer. "Word gets around fast when you're tied to that kind of money." Mary stiffened. "So what?" "I just think it's funny. A few years ago, you wouldn't even let me buy you dinner without lecturing me on independence. Now you're cuddled up in a billionaire's guest house." She stepped forward. "That's none of your business." Jordan leaned in, voice dropping. "You really trust him? That family? They protect their own interests, Mary. And you You've got a lot to lose. Mary's spine went rigid. You're wasting your breath. He stepped back, smirking. Just a friendly warning. Careful who you fall for. As he walked out, Mary stared at the door, breath uneven. She wanted to dismiss him, but his words lit a fuse beneath all her old fears. That night, she met Luke for dinner. They sat outside a quiet Italian place, the city glowing behind them. She didn't wait long. Luke, tell me something. He looked up mid-bite. Anything. Have you ever hidden anything from me? About your family? About this whole situation? He set down his fork. Where is this coming from? Someone from my past came by. Said your family has a reputation for protecting itself at all costs. Luke's jaw tightened. That's true. My father didn't build his empire by being soft. But it's not about business. Isn't it? She asked, her voice trembling. What if you wake up one day and decide we're a liability? Luke reached across the table, taking her hand. Mary, I didn't come back to play house. I came back because I couldn't walk away. Because I love them. And his voice faltered, I think I'm falling in love with you. Her eyes widened, caught off guard. I know I hurt you before, he continued. And I'll spend the rest of my life making it right if I have to. But I'm not that guy anymore. Mary held his gaze, torn between fear and faith. And slowly, her hand tightened in his. Then prove it, she whispered. Don't just show up. Stay. Chapter 10. A Father's Promise. The morning air was crisp, filled with the scent of freshly cut grass as Mary, Luke, and the twins walked through the sprawling Davidson estate gardens. The twins ran ahead, their laughter carrying through the space as they raced toward the flower maze at the back of the property. Luke and Mary trailed behind, walking in quiet companionship. You're really starting to get the hang of this, Mary said, her voice lighter than it had been in weeks. Luke smiled, but there was a shadow of concern in his eyes. I want to, but I don't know if I'm doing enough. Mary stopped walking, her gaze shifting to where the twins were already lost in the maze. She turned to him. What do you mean? Luke ran a hand through his hair, frustration flickering on his face. It's not enough to just be there for them. I have to prove I'm worthy of their trust. Of yours. Mary's heart clenched, recognizing the weight of his guilt. Look, you're doing all you can right now. You're here. That's what matters. They need you. You just need to be yourself. But I wasn't there for you when it mattered most, he said, the remorse evident in his voice. You didn't just need me, you deserved me. Mary softened, stepping closer. We can't change the past, Luke. But we have the future. His gaze dropped to the ground, and he gave a small shake of his head. I don't deserve to be in their lives. Not after everything. She reached out, touching his arm. You're wrong. You're here. And that's the first step. Luke closed his eyes for a moment, taking in a deep breath, as if trying to steady himself. I promised myself that I would always be there for them from now on, no matter what. Mary watched him, her chest tight as she saw the sincerity in his eyes. For the first time, she truly believed him. The twins emerged from the maze, both beaming with excitement as they held up a collection of wildflowers they'd picked. Adrian's eyes glistened with pride. We found the biggest flower in the maze. Look, Mom. Look, Luke. Luke knelt down, his hands trembling slightly as he accepted the flowers. These are beautiful, Adrian, he said, smiling warmly. You two are excellent explorers. Lily tugged at his sleeve. We're going to make a flower crown, right? I think that sounds like a great idea, Luke said with a chuckle. He looked up at Mary. How about we get some lemonade and make a picnic out of it? Mary smiled, her heart swelling with an unexpected hope. That sounds perfect. Later that evening, after the kids had fallen asleep and the house was quiet, Luke and Mary sat on the terrace overlooking the estate. The stars blinked above them, and the world felt still, like it was holding its breath. Luke turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Mary, I need you to know something." She tilted her head, curious. "What?" "I don't expect perfection. I don't expect you to forget everything from the past. But I need you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Not again. I'll be here. For you. For them." Mary swallowed hard, her emotions catching in her throat. "Luke." "I love you, Mary," he whispered, his voice raw. "And I'm not leaving. Not now. Not ever." The weight of his words settled over her like a warm blanket, and for the first time in years, she allowed herself to believe in the possibility of love again. She reached for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his, and in that quiet moment, she made a promise to herself to trust him, to trust this family they were building. Chapter 11. New Beginnings. The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the city as Mary drove home from work, the familiar hum of traffic filling the air. Her thoughts were a mix of optimism and uncertainty. Luke had shown up for the past few weeks, every day, every moment, and the children were flourishing with his involvement. Yet, there was still a part of her, a voice deep inside, that wondered if the fairy tale was too good to be true. When she arrived home, Adrian and Lily were sitting at the kitchen table, their backpacks scattered around them. Luke was leaning against the counter, discussing their homework with them in a way that made it seem as if he had always been part of the routine. Mary stood in the doorway for a moment, watching. Luke's relaxed, easygoing manner with the children filled her heart. They were a family now. She could feel it in the way Adrian joked with him about how bad his soccer skills were, and in the way Lily kept stealing glances at him as she worked on her math. The normalcy of it felt like a dream. "Hey, Mom." Adrian waved her over. "Look what Luke taught us today." Mary raised an eyebrow. "Oh!" "What was that?" "Sign language." Lily jumped in. "We learned the alphabet, and we can spell out our names now." Mary chuckled, walking over to kiss both of their heads. "That's incredible. You've been busy." Luke grinned. "Yeah, I thought it might be fun to try something new. It's been great seeing how excited they are about learning." Mary's heart warmed, but then the front door opened with a soft creak, and in walked Mr. Davidson. His presence was commanding, as always, but today there was something different in his eyes. A knowing look. A softness that hadn't been there before. "Evening, all," he said, removing his coat and hanging it carefully on the hook by the door. He glanced at Luke. "We need to talk." Mary's stomach tightened. "About what?" "I've been thinking," Mr. Davidson continued, taking a seat at the table, "and I believe it's time for the next step. This family needs more stability. You both need to be fully committed. Not just to the kids, but to one another." Luke shifted, looking uneasy. "I'm already committed." Mr. Davidson nodded, his eyes sharp. "I know that. But there's more to this than showing up every day. You need to be united, Mary. For Adrian and Lily. For yourselves. You both need to think about the future in terms of more than just parenting." Mary's breath caught in her chest. "What are you suggesting?" He met her gaze steadily. "A more permanent commitment. A formal commitment." "Wait," Luke interjected, standing up. "You're not talking about marriage, are you?" Mr. Davidson gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "Not yet. But it's something you should consider. You both have the foundation now. The kids are part of this. You're not just playing house. So what's next?" Mary's mind raced. The idea of taking that final leap, of opening herself up to Luke entirely, was terrifying. She had never wanted a relationship like this to be about expectations or obligation. She had wanted it to be about choice. But there was something in the way Luke was looking at her now, The way he was so present with their children, that made the decision feel a little less frightening. And maybe, just maybe, she could build the kind of life with him that she had always longed for. She stood there for a moment, the weight of the question hanging between them. Then she turned to Luke, who was watching her intently, his eyes full of promise. "I don't know what the future holds," she said quietly, "but I'm willing to find out. With you. Together." Luke's face softened, and he took her hand, bringing it to his lips. "Then let's do this. Let's make this real." Mr. Davidson nodded approvingly. "I'll be here to support you both, in any way I can. But this is on you now." That night, as the family sat down to dinner, there was an unspoken sense of togetherness that hung in the air. Adrian and Lily chattered happily, unaware of the deeper shift happening between their parents. But Luke and Mary knew this was a new beginning. Mary couldn't shake the feeling that, somehow, this had always been where she was meant to be. Here. With him. With them. In this life they were building together. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late for them to find their happy ending. Chapter 12, A New Promise. The following weeks passed in a whirlwind of adjustments and rediscovered routines. Mary found herself juggling the demands of her career with the new rhythm of family life. Luke was always there, taking on more and more responsibilities with each passing day. He'd taken on a role that, once, she thought would be impossible for him, that of a father, a consistent presence, a partner. And yet, despite the quiet joy of their growing connection, there was still a piece of Mary's heart that couldn't quite shake the remnants of her past. The scars that remained from her years of navigating motherhood alone, from the fear that always hovered on the edges of her happiness. One chilly Sunday morning, as Mary and Luke sat at the kitchen table with the kids, discussing plans for the day, her phone rang with an unknown number flashing across the screen. She hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hello. Mary, it's Jordan." Her stomach twisted at the sound of his voice. "What do you want?" "I just want to talk." "It's been a while," he said, his tone more subdued than she remembered. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need you to hear me out." Mary looked at Luke, who was distracted by Adrian's excited chatter about a school project. She stood up, walking toward the hallway for privacy. "I don't need anything from you, Jordan." "I know. I want to apologize," he said, his voice quieter now. "For everything. For how I left things. I didn't realize until recently how much I screwed up." Mary felt a cold wave of anger rise within her, but she held it back. "You think a few words can fix all the damage you caused?" "No," he admitted, his voice raw. "But I need you to know that I see it. All of it. And I don't expect you to forgive me, but I want to be honest with you for once." She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of years of pain press down on her chest. "Jordan, the past is the past. I've moved on. We both have." "I see that," he said, almost wistfully. "But I wanted to say this. I'll never be the man you deserve. I wasn't then, and I'm not now. But I'm proud of you, Mary, for everything you've done. For those kids." Her breath caught. The apology wasn't what she expected, but somehow it felt like the final piece of closure she'd been looking for. "Thank you, Jordan, for saying that." There was a long pause on the line before he spoke again. "Take care of yourself. And them. You've got a good man in Luke. Don't let the past hold you back." Mary's throat tightened, and she hung up the phone, a sense of finality settling over her. The door to her past had closed, finally, and she was ready to leave it there. When she returned to the kitchen, Luke glanced up, concern flashing across his face. "Everything okay?" She smiled, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "Yeah, everything's fine. Just needed to close something off from my past." Luke's eyes softened. "You don't have to do it alone, you know. You never will again." Mary stepped closer to him, her heart full of gratitude for the man who had stayed when it mattered most. I know. I'm starting to realize that. He took her hand in his, squeezing it gently. We're in this together. Whatever comes next. As they stood there, in the quiet warmth of their kitchen, the sound of the kids playing in the next room, Mary knew without a doubt that she was where she was meant to be. With Luke. With Adrian and Lily. Building something stronger than she'd ever dared to dream. Chapter 13. The future unfolds. Spring had arrived, bringing with it an air of renewal, both in nature and in Mary's life. The Davidson estate, now a familiar place for the entire family, seemed to bloom in sync with the changes taking place in her heart. Luke, who once seemed like a distant, fleeting memory, had become a constant presence, a partner, a father, and, she realized, the person she had always longed for, even before she knew it. One Saturday afternoon, as Mary and Luke were walking through the estate's gardens, the twins racing ahead, Luke paused, his gaze fixed on the horizon. The warmth of the sun made the world seem almost dreamlike. I've been thinking, Luke began, his voice tentative. About us. About our future. Mary glanced at him, a spark of curiosity flickering in her chest. What about it? I've been given a second chance here, he said, turning to face her. And I know I'm not perfect, but I want to be. For you. For the kids. And I want to build something with you that lasts. Not just for today or tomorrow, but forever. Mary's heart skipped a beat, but she remained still, taking in his words. Luke. I know I've hurt you in the past, and I can't undo that. But what I can do is show you that I'm committed. To this. To us. He paused, eyes searching hers. So, what do you say? Will you marry me, Mary? Will you take this step with me for real? The world around her seemed to slow, and she found herself unable to speak for a moment. The weight of the question, the commitment it implied, was monumental. But as she looked into Luke's eyes, she saw something more than the man who had once been a stranger to her. She saw the father of her children, the man who had stayed when things got difficult, the person who was no longer just a part of her past, but a central part of her future. She began, her voice catching in her throat. I don't need grand gestures, Luke. I just need to know you'll be there. And if you're telling me you're here, then I'm here too. I'm all in. Luke's face softened, relief and joy mingling in his features. He stepped forward, taking her hand in his. I will be. For you. For the kids. A tear slid down Mary's cheek, and she smiled, her heart swelling with love. Yes, Luke. Yes, I'll marry you. The words hung in the air between them, as if the universe itself had held its breath. The moment was perfect in its simplicity. There was no need for elaborate plans, no pressure for an extravagant ceremony, just the promise of a life together, one step at a time. As Luke pulled her into a warm embrace, she felt the weight of the past fall away completely. The years of loneliness, of fear, of not knowing what the future held, all of it seemed to fade into nothingness in the face of the love they shared now. A love that wasn't perfect, but real. And that was enough. Weeks later. The Davidson estate was once again alive with energy, but this time, there was a new excitement in the air. Mary and Luke had begun planning their wedding, though it wasn't the typical grand affair one might expect from the Davidson family. Instead, they opted for something more intimate, a small ceremony on the estate's grounds, surrounded by close family and friends. The twins, of course, were to be included as the flower girl and ring bearer. Mary stood in front of a full-length mirror, dressed in a simple yet elegant white gown, her heart racing with anticipation. Her reflection stared back at her, no longer the woman who carried the weight of past mistakes, but someone transformed. Someone ready for the future. Luke stood outside, pacing nervously as he waited for the ceremony to begin. Despite everything, despite all the progress they had made, there was still a part of him that feared losing her. But he had never felt more certain about anything in his life than he did about Mary. The ceremony was small, intimate. The vows they exchanged were simple, but their meaning was profound. And when Mary said, "I do," she felt the world shift beneath her feet, the past finally laying to rest as she stepped fully into this new chapter. As they exchanged their first kiss as husband and wife, the twins cheered, their laughter filling the air. It was a moment of pure joy, and for the first time in years, Mary felt the kind of peace she had always longed for. Epilogue: A future together. The months that followed their wedding were filled with laughter, growth, and the quiet joy of everyday life. Luke and Mary continued to build a home together, one grounded in love and mutual respect. Their children thrived in the environment they had created, their bond growing stronger with each passing day. Luke never stopped proving himself to be the man Mary had hoped he would become. He was there for her, for the kids, every single day. And with each new experience, Mary found herself falling deeper in love with the man who had once been a stranger and was now everything she had ever dreamed of. Together, they had built a family. Together, they had built a future. And for the first time in her life, Mary knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. Thank you for listening. Like and subscribe for more short stories.